OTAN, Outreach and Technical Assistance Network.
Okay, so hi everyone. We're here for Tech Tools for Assessment, Part 1. My name is Anthony Burik. I am a project specialist for OTAN. And I'm super excited to start this three-part series on assessment. Many of you have been coming to OTAN webinars and presentations over the last few months, and we really appreciate your attendance. Just on a personal note, I feel like we've kind of been nibbling around the edges of assessment these last few months. We've talked about a number of tools that you might use for assessment. Sometimes depending on the webinar you're sitting in, there might be a discussion about assessment. But I really haven't felt like we've done the topic of assessment justice. It's a huge topic, as y'all know. It's a critical component of our instruction. And so I thought that maybe over the next few weeks, we would take some time to really kind of dive deep into assessment. And along those lines, really start exploring some of the tools that you might use for assessment in a variety of circumstances. So I know that many people are familiar with tools like Kahoot or Quizzes or Quizlet, and we've done those presentations over the last few months. That's really kind of one component of assessment. It's not the whole story about assessment. So I'm hoping that over the next few weeks, we'll be able to really kind of dive into assessment and talk about it and think about how we're going to plan for assessment when we start again in a couple months, or maybe a month, or maybe a few weeks. We'll see. So as Melinda pointed out, if you came into the room late, we actually are going to run a Zoom meeting rather than a webinar. So things are going to look different than how we normally do things around here. And so one of the things that I would like us to do over the next few weeks especially is for us to do some small group work in Zoom breakout rooms. And fingers crossed that it goes well. And I'm hoping that you'll be open to that experience. I'm not sure if you're using Zoom breakout rooms in your own work. If you haven't been in a breakout room before, now's the time. Let's try it out. So, let me forward to, by the way, again, OTAN, always come and visit our website, otan.us. We have a lot of stuff there on a whole variety of topics. So I want to talk about our agenda, not just for today, but kind of my plan for the next few weeks. And what I'm going to turn off my video as well to save bandwidth here. Okay, so here's my plan for the next few weeks. So I've kind of broken it down into three different areas or that kind of make sense to me. So today we're going to talk about we're going to introduce ourselves to the topic of assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about question formation, and then we're going to talk about questionnaires. And when I talk about questionnaires, I'm going to talk about polls and surveys. For the majority of today, we'll also talk about exit tickets, hopefully near the end of our time today. So that's what I plan to do today. It's a pretty ambitious agenda, but let's do it. Part 2, which is going to be next Wednesday, I'd like to talk about some tech tools that you can use to present and assess simultaneously. So you're kind of going back and forth between presenting and assessing. And you're using the data that you're collecting and you're assessing to inform your continual or continuous presentation. I think it's continual actually, but so we're going to talk about that next week, part 2. And then part 3, which will be in a couple of weeks, we're going to focus on formative and summative assessment. And like I say, I think that in general, like this is kind of what folks are most familiar with when we talk about tech tools for assessment. So your Kahoot, your Quizzes, your Quizlet. I didn't want to jump into that right away because I think there's some other things that we should be thinking about on the topic of assessment. But we're going to circle back to kind of that discussion in a couple of weeks in part 3. And then we'll also talk about the importance of data collection. So again, that's my plan for the next 3 weeks. Welcome to today. I hope you come back over the next couple of weeks. I know we're getting into the second half of July, and normally, if things were normal, that means that probably most of us wouldn't be here, and yet we are all here. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you over the next couple of weeks as well. So I have provided a link to all of my resources. So those are available right now. If you want to go ahead and maybe open up, as Melinda was saying, what you can do is you could maybe open up 2 windows. You'd have your Zoom window on one side if you want to open up a browser on the other side. But if you go to my link here, bit.ly/techtoolsassess, and bit.lys are case sensitive, so it's capital T for tech, capital T for tools, capital A for assess. And let me see if I can type that. I'm on 2 monitors, folks, so I'm both presenting and participating. So that's how the world goes these days. So I just typed it into the chat. So if you want to copy that, and then you can paste it into a browser. I'm going to show you, let me close this, what that leads you to. So I've set up a Google site. Hopefully you're here. The address is right here as well, bit.ly/techtoolsassess, and note the capitals. 3 files for today. So if you scroll down a little bit. Far left, you should see a copy of my slides. So those are available. In the middle, I have a notes document. And so these are some things that would be helpful for you to kind of read about and learn more about on the topic of assessment that we're going to talk about today. So just some background notes for you for further exploration. And then at the end of our time, we're going to do this exit ticket. So don't worry about the exit ticket just yet. If you do want to open up the slides to follow along or look at later, just come back to my Google. This is a Google site, and the address again is bit.ly/tech, capital T, tools, capital T, assess, capital A. And if you're having any trouble with that, just Melinda's monitoring the chat. So go ahead and type that in if you're having any trouble there. Okay. So let me go back to my presentation. Okay, so let's start with an icebreaker. The focus of our icebreaker is going to be 2 questions: what makes a good assessment, and what makes a bad assessment? Okay, and in a couple of minutes, you're going to be in a Zoom breakout room with some of your colleagues here, and you're going to discuss those 2 questions. Okay. Now, again, I don't know what people's experience has been with breakout rooms, whether you've had any experience with breakout rooms or have not had any experience with breakout rooms, but I'm going to kind of walk you through how those work. Let me see if I can close this window here. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about how breakout rooms work from the teacher's point of view. So if you want to, if you have a Zoom account, you want to practice later, this is how they work. Okay, so when you are the host of the meeting, you have the opportunity to create breakout rooms. So there's the Zoom toolbar along the bottom of your screen. One of the options that you have is to create breakout rooms. So you have you're going to click on that function to open up the to create the breakout rooms. And then you're going to get a window that looks like this, okay? And so based on the number of people who are in your session, you will have to decide how many people you want to have work in the breakout rooms. Okay. So right now we have about 48 people or so in the room, 48 participants. And I'm thinking, well, I probably want to put maybe 4 people in a breakout room. So if I do the math correctly, I'm going to need to create 12 breakout rooms. And so you use this box here to decide how many breakout rooms you're going to create. You have a couple of options. You have to automatically create them or manually create them. I'm going to automatically create the rooms, which means it's basically just going to put random people into the rooms. If you wanted to be more intentional about it, you could select manually, and then you could decide who's going to be in which room with whom. So maybe if you had a smaller class, that's something that you might want to consider doing. Once I work out the math, I go ahead and click on this button to create rooms. It'll bring me to this next window here. The breakout rooms, basically the number of rooms and who gets assigned to each of these rooms, okay? And then it'll show you a count of how many people actually are in the rooms, okay? As the host, as the creator, you want to look at this options down at the bottom, and then you have a lot of options in terms of the breakout rooms. For our purposes today, I'm going to make sure that I set the timer. That's one of the things that you do so that so you have the rooms only open for a certain amount of time. Okay, you have a few other options as well, but that's where the options are. You go ahead and open all the rooms. So you click on that button. It'll bring you to this next window, which basically will show the breakout rooms in progress. It also has a counter at the very top. So, I'm going to set the rooms for 10 minutes. So that's my counter is going to count down from 10 minutes and kind of show me a real-time count of how much time we have left in the rooms. If for some reason some students have not been assigned to a room, you can go ahead and assign them to any room that you would like. You also have the option to broadcast a message to all the rooms here. It's basically a one-way message. Maybe like, hope things are going well, wrap things up in a few minutes, however you want to do that. So you have that option too. When you're in a breakout room as a student or participant, you also have the ability to invite the host into the breakout room if you need help. So look at your Zoom toolbar at the bottom, and one of the options that should appear is this Ask for Help. Go ahead and click on it, and then from here, you can invite the host. So that will send a message to me as the host to know, oh, I need to go to this room because they need help. Now, just a caution here, if, depending on how many people are in your room, don't have everybody invite the host. Just assign one person to invite the host, and we'll talk about that in a second. When you're in the breakout room, I would maybe suggest this whiteboard option. So when you click share screen, the green, it should appear green at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. This window will open up. You have a couple of different options depending on your computer, but one of them should be whiteboard. So go ahead and click on whiteboard, and then you share that, and that will open up a whiteboard that you can work on. Along with the whiteboard, you'll get this annotation toolbar. So for our purposes, I would suggest that you just use text. So text, when you click on text, this will create a text box on the whiteboard. You can type whatever you want to in the text box, and that will appear on the whiteboard for everybody in the room to see. Mom always told me to be polite. So a good way to, keep track of who would like to speak is to use the raise hand feature. So when you have the participants open, it should appear, there's like a little toolbar that appears in the participants window. Raise hand will be on the far left side. You go ahead and click this to raise your hand. Make sure to click it a second time to lower your hand. So the person knows that you're not, your question was addressed. Okay, and then for our purposes today, I'm going to suggest these 4 roles for our breakout room. A moderator, so somebody to keep the group on track with the questions. Again, we got 2 questions. Somebody who is working the whiteboard as the note taker. And again, I would suggest that you use the text box for our purposes today. Assign someone to be the timekeeper, and also to be the one person who can ask for help. So if your group needs help, that's the person who's gonna click on that button to ask for help, okay? And then I would like maybe some of the groups to just do a quick report out when we come back into the general room. So if one person could be the reporter, and I would suggest actually for today that if that person could take a screenshot of your whiteboard once you're finished, then if you share your screen, then you'll be able to share the picture with us in the Zoom room, in the general room, okay? And Windows snipping tool, if you're on a Windows machine to take a screenshot, or if you're on a Mac, it's Command, the Apple, that funny looking Apple symbol, so Command plus Shift plus 4 will be for a screenshot. Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat here. I think we're okay. So again, what makes a good assessment? What makes a bad assessment? 4 roles: moderator, note taker, timekeeper, reporter. And also make sure to introduce yourself to each other as you come into the room. So I'm gonna stop share. All right, so I hope that was good for everyone. For some of you who are already using breakout rooms, should be pretty comfortable by now for you. If this was your first experience in a breakout room, Zoom breakout room, congratulations, you made it out alive. You lived to tell about it. So I'm wondering if maybe we could have a couple of you, a couple of the groups maybe just share what you all learned and talked about in the session. Go ahead and do that by raising your hand. Alex, hi Alex. I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to, actually let me stop sharing. Do you want to go ahead and grab the mic and share with us with what your group talked about?
But we had a question, and that is that we didn't have or couldn't find access to the whiteboard, and we wondered if we had it or how to get access if you're not a host. We need something.
Right. So my understanding was that you all would have a whiteboard, you know, in the breakout room. Now maybe that was the incorrect assumption on my part. Maybe we need to enable it. I was in a room and eventually the person found it.
You have to click on share screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, I mean, I can say a few things about what we talked about and Victoria can chime in, but
sure.
We didn't find the whiteboard, so hence no screen share.
No
so
visual.
We talked a little bit about what a good assessment is, and we agreed that it's valid and reliable. In other words, it tests what you taught, and that it's appropriate, it's level appropriate, and that there's consistent scoring and a variation of types of questions. Victoria, did you want to?
No, I thought that was anything? Yeah, I thought that was great. And then the types of questions would be, you know, the true, false, multiple choice essays, just a variety of different kinds for different kinds of learners. But yeah, that's the basic summary of what we talked about. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex and Victoria. Okay, so Guillermo, my friend Guillermo Verdin, LAUSD, welcome Guillermo. Do you want to go ahead and grab the mic and share with us what your group talked about?
Yes, in terms of good assessment, it evaluates the lesson objectives. It's congruent with the presentation of the lesson. It's clear and it's student friendly. There's appropriate rigor. It evaluates the established standards, whether it's CCRS or the ELPS. It's also timely. There's not a long gap between the lesson and the assessment. Are we talking about the bad assessments now?
Sure, sounds good.
It's not relevant to the lesson. It's too long. It's not comprehensive, and it contains elements that are not at level or level appropriate. That's what we discussed in our group.
Thank you, Guillermo. I appreciate that. Sounds good. Okay, is there one more group perhaps, maybe with a whiteboard screenshot that wants to tell us what you talked about in your group? In the chat, it looks like some folks also, this was their first time to try the whiteboard. Yeah, it takes a little getting used to, you know, especially if you don't use text boxes a lot or anything like that. Oh my gosh, here we go.
Am I sharing?
Yes, I see something.
Okay.
It looks like a whiteboard.
Yes, my screen is very different. So what we did was when you open the whiteboard, we had different little text boxes.
Yes.
And so we just, instead of making columns, I did text boxes and moved them around. So we had what makes a good assessment. You can see there, we talked about the fairness of an assessment. Like if you're using technology, the students all have access to the same devices, and are they able to use devices, kind of like what we're learning right now, Anthony, with the technology skills. Does everyone know what the assessment, how it's going to be based? And then we talked about the exposure to the content. Were there scaffolding lessons? Does the assessment reflect, oh, that should say lessons, so that the students had enough exposure to gain the skills that they're going to be assessed on. And then is there proper time to take the assessment? That was an important one, so that the students don't feel rushed or anything. And then under what makes a bad assessment, we put the format of the assessment, or that it's not clear how to respond or what you're supposed to do. Are the instructions clear? We put the results don't measure the skills desired, or it's not a measurable task, or the knowledge is more, inferred and not direct. Maybe the assessment, the skill is not really achievable in the assessment. And then we were struggling a little bit with this, and Grace or Dean, you could pipe in if you'd like to, that the observation was more subjective of the student and not objective, just kind of a clear understanding of what they were doing.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thank you so much, Diana.
You're welcome.
And I'm glad that we got at least one visible whiteboard. So thank you so much. It looks
Well,
fantastic.
I had to do that because you called me out on my video at the beginning.
Okay, so thanks, Diana. So great, fantastic. Okay, so good start to our breakout rooms. I appreciate you working in the breakout rooms. It's always a little bit of a learning curve if you're new to them. We're going to be in a breakout room soon enough, so you get another chance to do some breakout room work. Okay, so let's talk about questionnaires. So just kind of a definition to start. A questionnaire is a set of questions for obtaining statistically useful or personal information from individuals. And what I'd like for us to talk about today is some forms of questionnaires, polls and surveys. So I'm pretty sure that most of us, maybe all of us, have used these in our class in some way, shape, or form. We tend to use the terms interchangeably. However, there is a difference between a poll and a survey. So a poll is used, and you can read the definition here or the description. A poll is used to ask one simple question, while a survey is generally used to ask a wide range of multiple questions. So it's good to keep this in mind when you consider how you're going to structure your assessment. Are you going to create a poll, or are you going to create a survey? And in this case, not necessarily like for a quiz or a test, like as we commonly think of an assessment. We're thinking about a poll or a survey for different reasons. Like, we want to do some different things in our class. And so we want to use a poll or a survey for those activities. So just a very simple example of a poll, actually in Zoom, as the host, you have the ability to add polls and administer polls during the Zoom session. Not sure if everybody knew about that, but you do have that option. This is a very simple poll that basically allows you to ask a question, and in terms of your responses, either somebody will give one response, like a typical multiple choice question, or the multiple choice, it's kind of misleading. You actually could mark more than one, right? So if I gave you, what's your favorite ice cream, and chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, coconut, tutti frutti, whatever, you could mark more than one. That's what a multiple choice in this case would mean. The thing about the Zoom polls is that you actually can create many, many, many polls. However, you can only give the poll or administer the poll one at a time. So that's how it matches the typical or the traditional definition of a poll. You might have a lot of questions that you want to ask, but you're basically just asking them one at a time. Versus a survey, where, and a lot of folks are familiar, say, with Google Forms or Microsoft Forms to create a survey, where you can ask a variety of questions kind of all at once, or maybe on one page or in one section. You could ask multiple choice questions. You could ask short answer questions. You could ask a kind of like a matching question. You could even upload a file as a part of your answer to the question. So it's good to keep these kind of two definitions or two terms in mind, that there is a difference. And when you are working in the class or working with your students, think about how you're going to actually administer these things. Okay, and I see that folks have questions about the Zoom polls, Melinda is one of our Zoom experts. And so if you do have questions about Zoom polls, go ahead and put those in the chat and Melinda can help you with that. Okay, so a very important component of assessment is question formation. And so the question is, are we asking good questions in the assessment? And I think some of you in your groups probably talked about this. You know, for example, like if the questions don't really get at what you've been teaching the students or what the students have been learning, are those really good assessment questions? Like are they valuable questions for you as the assessor? And are they valuable questions to answer for the students as the people who are trying to express what they've learned to you? So really, you know, assessments really hinge on question formation. Okay, so I'd like to spend just a little bit of time looking at question formation. It's a huge part of assessment, and for those of us, for example, like me, who attended ed school in a whole different millennium, like I don't even remember a class about, you know, asking good assessment questions. It's all kind of everything that I learned, you know, being in the classroom and creating assessments and looking at what other people had created and maybe adjusting or modifying what others had created. But there's been a lot of research done on question formation. And so it's a really good opportunity, I think, for us to think about, you know, or to kind of reflect on our own work and see if maybe we need to do some work on asking better questions when we create our assessments, okay? If you are following along on the slides on your own, don't just kind of wait here because we're gonna look at some questions and I don't want you to skip ahead for the answers, okay? So multiple choice questions, they tend to be kind of asked a lot as an assessment question. There is an anatomy to a multiple choice question. So the question portion of it is called the stem. And then the answers are called, these are the different alternatives, but one of the answers is the correct answer, of course. And then the other ones are known as distractors, okay? So this is kind of how a multiple choice question is formed. So I'd like for us to look at some questions and just a lot of these questions are science questions. I'm not a science teacher, so I don't even know what these questions are about. But I want you to look at the formation of these questions and try to figure out what's wrong with these questions. Like why are these not good questions that we have created for the students, okay? So what's wrong with question 1? Take a look at it. If you have some ideas, go ahead and type your answers in the chat. And we'll give folks maybe 30 seconds to think about what's wrong with question 1. Okay. So as you're thinking about that, I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next one. So basically, the thing that's wrong with question 1 is that I know that everybody was looking at the answers, but actually what needed to be fixed in question 1 was the stem, was the actual question itself, right? So instead of, the original question was, which of the following is a true statement? We actually needed a better question, a better stem here. So the question is, what characteristic is relatively constant in mitochondrial genomes across species, okay? So actually we needed a better question. The better question actually cleaned up the answer portion of this, right? So that's what was wrong with number 1. Okay, let's try another one. Number 2, what's wrong with question 2? The question is, which of the following is not true about mitochondria, A, B, or C? So what's wrong with question 2? So I see Jill typed in the chat the words not true. Okay, and so actually this is the part of this question that is wrong. Okay, it's called negative phrasing, and so there are better ways to form your stem if you want to do something like not true. So I have a couple of examples here. So better way to ask this question would be, all of the following are true about mitochondria except, or even better yet, take that all of the following and put it at the end and put the main stem in the beginning. So a water type extinguisher is suitable for putting out a fire caused by burning all of the following except. So the main problem with question number 2 in the not true is that we're starting to get into the realm of reading comprehension and increasing cognitive load. So is the question really about a student's reading comprehension, or is it about whether or not they know the correct answer? So these kinds of questions are not very good. They could be rephrased. The STEM could be better phrased to really be less of a cognitive load in terms of being able to get through the STEM to figure out what is actually the correct answer. Okay, let's try another question. Number 3, what's wrong with question 3? In addition to the nucleus, blank are organelles that contain DNA. So what's wrong with question 3? So looks like we got a couple of responses in. Yes, the problem with this question is the blank space, okay? In this case, question 3 avoids what some people call an interior blank. Sometimes it's called an initial blank, where we put the blank at the beginning of the question. So if you really want to use a blank, you should put it at the end of the question. Again, the placement of blanks at the beginning or in the middle of questions increase the cognitive load on a student. And again, it becomes more of a reading comprehension exercise rather than a do I know what the correct answer is exercise. So it's better to avoid these blanks in the beginning or middle parts of the questions. If you really want to have a blank, it should be towards the end or not at all. So in addition to the nucleus, which organelles contain DNA, A, B, or C? Okay, so blanks are kind of, problematic. So we should avoid using them or put them at the ends of questions. Okay, let's try another one. Question 4, what's wrong with question 4? Some folks call them implausible alternatives, okay? So obviously B and E are the implausible alternatives. They are not functional distractors, right? Really, and I know that I'm guilty of these kinds of questions, right? You're pressed for time. It's like, oh my God, I just can't, I just have to think of a fourth answer that, and so whatever comes to mind is what I put in. And so again, that's not really doing the student any good by putting these answers in that are implausible or not functional. The answers should be a test of the student's understanding of what it is you've been teaching. So they should be plausible alternatives. They should be functional distractors, okay? Okay, let's switch to a true-false question. What's wrong with this question? Again, this would be a true-false question. When you see a highway with a marker that reads Interstate 80, you know that the construction and upkeep of that road is maintained by the state and federal government. True or false? So what's wrong with this question? Yeah, Susan types too long, too wordy, too convoluted. Yes, right, okay. So again, when we write our questions, we should make them very simple and clear. Again, when we make the questions long, too long, too wordy, too convoluted, we're really not, we want the students to be able to understand the question and, again, based on their learning or their understanding of the content, be able to choose what they think to be the correct answer. The question should not get in the way of the assessment. And too often with wordy questions or wordy statements or convoluted statements, these are problematic for the students. Okay, let's try another one. Again, this would be like a true or false question. So what's wrong with question 6? Yes, right. It has that, and I love that phrase, and I can't pronounce it correctly. It's a beautiful phrase, and I'm not going to even attempt my French. Thank you, whoever said that. The French speakers among us. It's a beautiful phrase, and I love it, and I wish I use it more, but I'm too shy because I don't know how to say it properly. So, okay. So yes, when we ask questions, we should be very careful about the vocabulary that we're using in the question. To us, this may be something that we're very familiar with. We might use it in, every so often in conversation, but when it comes to questions, no unfamiliar vocabulary. And I think that, sometimes this is the discussion, this is part of the discussion about standardized tests. The cultural biases of the test writers sometimes gets in the, into the writing of the questions or the presentation of the questions. So we should be very clear on the vocabulary that we use when we're forming questions. Okay, let's look at question 7. It's a matching question. So what do you think is wrong with this question? Look at the actual construction of what you see on the left side, the numbered answers, or sorry, the numbered phrases, and what you see on the right side, the lettered answers. And just kind of focus on that. Yeah, I think Heidi's onto something here. It's obvious if you know grammar and sentence structure, right? So actually, this matching question is not very well formed, because there are too many clues in here that give away some of the answers. So for example, look at phrase number 4 here, right? Marx was a German philosopher and economist who founded. Okay, so what would be like an acceptable answer at the very end of this phrase, right? You know, if you're in a history class and you've been studying like different philosophies or political systems or something like that, then it's going to be something like communism, totalitarianism, fascism, democracy, something like that. The only possible answer really for number 4 is E, right? If you have a good sense of like the formation of these, or what the test writer was thinking when they wrote these kinds of questions, okay? Look at number 2, right? Machiavelli wrote about achieving political, okay, so typically people write books or essays or something like that. Letter A is The Prince. This is a title of a book, right? So if you know that this is a title of a book and you know that Machiavelli wrote a book, even if you don't know that Machiavelli wrote The Prince, A probably would be a very good answer for number 2, right? And so it's not really testing your content knowledge. It's more like, oh, well, what makes sense, right? So again, the way we might fix this is we want to write a test question that doesn't give away the answer with any kind of clues, grammatical clues, spelling clues, things like that, okay? So this would be a much better way to form this question. Okay, and it doesn't matter. I noticed some folks say that there wasn't an equal number of stuff on the left side and stuff on the right side. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And sometimes people actually have fewer answers on the right side than questions or statements on the left side, because then people have to decide, oh, well, you know, letter B actually applies to more than one. So which one, you know, which 2 or 3 of the phrases or sentences on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, you know, are true with, you know, answer B, for example. So it's okay if the number of, you know, if the left side items and the right side items, the numbers don't match up. Okay, last one, essay question. What's wrong with this question? So I'm sure that folks have figured out that basically this is way too broad of a question. You could spend, people write books about this, right? And we're giving students, you know, 30 minutes to construct a, you know, an essay on, you know, whatever the topic might be. So again, especially with essay questions, there needs to be a clearly defined task. So in this desirable question, the most important word in this question is the word compare, right? Compare is a task that the student can do, right? They're given 2 or 3 items to compare, and so they know, if you've been teaching them about comparing and contrasting, they know what it is that they need to do, you know, so that's the most important thing. Okay, so yeah, question formation is a huge topic and a huge component of assessment. And if you go, if you take some time to navigate over to the notes document that I provided on the Google site, I have some sites there listed for you to take a look at to learn more about question formation. I think if you haven't really thought about the topic for a while, you know, if you've just been teaching in the classroom and creating your assessments, it's a good refresher to remind yourself, like, oh, well, you know, am I really asking good questions in my assessments? And maybe are there some easy ways that I can fix some of the assessment questions that I've created? So we're back to the presentation. Again, for those of you who came in late or missed it, I have a Google site set up with our resources for today, bit.ly/capital T Tech, capital T Tools, capital A Assess. And this site, Google site, will be available for a while, so it'll be definitely available after today. I'm going to use this site and make some adjustments to it for parts 2 and 3. So for a while, you know, the next couple of days for sure, the part 1 materials will be here. But for part 2, I might go ahead and move these to like a separate page called part 1 page. So they will still be here, they'll just be in a different place, because when we come back next week for part 2, then I want you to be able to get quickly access the resources that we're going to use in part 2. Okay? Okay, so again, bit.ly/tech tools assess, capital T, capital T, capital A. Okay, so we're back. Here we go. And thank you, Elisa, for the break. Okay, so let's turn to poll and survey tech tools. All right. So there are many polling and surveying tools. I mean, if you know, in general, there are just many ed tech tools that are out there. And I know that a lot of you, probably most of you, if not all of you, you know, the last few months have been, have gotten a very quick and swift introduction to the variety of tech tools that are out there that we could be using in our classes and with our students. And when it comes to assessment, there's no end to the tools that you could be using. Some examples of polling and surveying tools that you already may be familiar with are Poll Everywhere, Direct Poll, Swift. Those are basically, those tools focus on polling. Then we have tools like SurveyMonkey, and probably more so the Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, which are tools that we use or folks use with kind of the surveying end of things. Okay, so there are a lot of tools that are out there. Just an FYI, OTAN doesn't recommend any one tool over any other. It's really up to you to decide, you know, what tools you'd like to use in your class, and you are certainly free to use whatever you would like. Today, I'm going to focus. Oh well, actually, I have a little soapbox item here. I'm going to focus on Poll Everywhere today, and we'll talk about Poll Everywhere in a second. But I think a lot of you have also figured out that with most of these, not all of them, but most of these ed tech tools, there's usually a free version of the tool, right? And with that free version comes kind of a limited introduction to the tool and what you can actually do with that tool. So just stepping on the soapbox for a second, I do want schools, maybe y'all, to, you know, to consider, you know, purchasing the subscription version of some of these tools. When you do that, it really opens up a lot more possibilities in terms of using these tools. It gives a lot more access to the teachers and students at your school to use these tools. You have features available that weren't previously available when you just were using the free version. And, you know, for many years, schools have been spending money on books and workbooks and other kinds of print materials. And, you know, maybe now's the time to reconsider the use of those monies. You know, maybe not so many books in the coming year, but maybe more money on, you know, some of the subscriptions for some of these tools that you all really like, and, you know, what a lot of your teachers are using back at your agencies. You know, have a discussion with your administrators and see if maybe it's now time to make that investment in a school subscription for some of these tools. So I'm gonna get off the soapbox. I do have some more thoughts about that in the notes as well. So, you know, take a look at those at your leisure. Okay, so we're gonna practice with a tool today called Poll Everywhere. Some of you probably have used this tool either as a user, you've actually done some of the polls. You know, in other presentations, maybe other presenters have created Poll Everywhere tools or polls. Maybe some of you have an account yourself and have done it, you know, created a few polls to use with your students. So I'd like for us to use this tool today as kind of an example of a polling tool that you might use with your students in your classes or online, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to, the Poll Everywhere website, which is polleverywhere.com. If this is your first time to the site, you're gonna go ahead and create an account. You wanna make sure that you select either a free K-12 account or a higher ed account. You do have those two options or a couple of other options. If you have created a Poll Everywhere account in the past and haven't looked at it recently, one of the things that Poll Everywhere did in response to COVID is they upped the number of people that you could give the poll to at any one time using the free version of Poll Everywhere. So it used to be 25. You can only have 25 people do the poll at any one time, and they've actually upped that number to 40 now. So yeah, so that's one of the benefits of the experience that we're in at the moment. So let me go to the Poll Everywhere site. Oops, polleverywhere.com. Okay, so again, I'd like for us to create an account at Poll Everywhere. So again, if this is your first time, go ahead and sign up. And you're gonna say that you're a presenter, teacher, presenter. And then go ahead and create an account here. First name, last name, an email address that you're checking, a password. Make sure you check the terms and conditions box here. And then you want to go ahead and also, if you would like to get more information from Poll Everywhere, you can sign up for their marketing materials there. Okay. While folks are working on that, let me go back here. So what I'd like for us to do is first to practice as users with Poll Everywhere. And again, with the free account now, you can administer a poll for up to 40 users. Now, today, I know that we have more than 40 people in the room. So it's like, oh, well, who gets to do it and who doesn't get to do it? So I'm gonna try to be fair about it. So at certain points, I'm gonna say that those of you with the last name A to M, you're gonna go ahead and do the poll activity. And if you are last name N to Z, wait for me to call you out, and then you'll go ahead and do your activity, okay? So we're gonna do that. Then we'll walk through how to create a few questions. And then I'd like to send you back to the Zoom room to do a little practice and group work. See if you can kind of work with the Poll Everywhere tool. See if you can actually do it yourself. And then if we have some time at the end, probably not, but we'll see, maybe we could do a couple of polls, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna stop this and let me open up. So, okay, I'm signed into my Poll Everywhere account here, okay? And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna do my July practice group poll here, okay? So I'm gonna click on the first question. You're kind of getting a behind the scenes view here. Okay, now what you're looking at, what I have here on the screen is the presenter view, all right? So here's what I'd like you to do. If you happen to have a mobile device with you, that would be ideal, because this is basically our students' experience, right? Our students are really only working on mobile phones. You know, that tends to be the majority of devices that folks have. So, do the full screen here. Okay, if you look at the top of the Zoom window, there are a couple of ways that you can connect to this poll, okay? So one way that you can do it, one way that you can do it is if you are on your device, you can open up a browser. And actually, I'm gonna log into my phone too. Open up a browser, Chrome, Safari, Edge, whatever, okay? And you're gonna type pollev, Pollev.com slash OTAN, OTAN trains, letter U, and then the number 534, okay? When you go to that site, you should get a message. Oh, okay. You should have a question. What is the capital of California, okay? And you should be able to go ahead and select one of the answers. Now, as the presenter, I have activated the poll, okay? So as people start responding to this poll, we should start to see other people's answers. Okay, so one of the ways that you can participate in this poll is, again, is if you go to poll everywhere, or sorry, pollev, pollev.com/OTANTrainsU534. And then that should open up a page either on your phone or on your computer. And then from there, you can select one of the answers. And if some of you could select some incorrect answers, that would be fantastic as well. You can also use your texting feature to connect to this poll. So if you open up your text function, and to the number 37607, you text OTAN trains U 534. And then you'll see that you have 4 answers, A, B, C, and D. And then you can go ahead and just type in your, or just text your answer, and then it should show up on the phone, on this poll. Okay. And then I just realized I didn't do what I said I was going to do because we have more than 40 folks in the room. So it might be that some of you who are 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46 aren't able to do it, but we'll see if we can get most of you. And actually, as the presenter, I could switch the view of some of these things. Let me see here. Where, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my other screen. Let me see if I can switch the results to show, rather than a percent, a count. Okay, so as the presenter, I just changed the view to see how many people actually have responded. So it looks like right now 11 people have selected Sacramento. 1 person has selected Stockton, 1 person has selected San Diego, 2 people have selected San Francisco. So you can actually change the view in a couple of different ways. And I'm looking, Elisa, does it let a participant know if they are not able to answer the poll? Well, if the poll comes up, you should be able to participate in the poll. So it might be that you actually haven't gotten to the poll. You're not at the right address. Again, pollev.com/OTANTrainsU534, or you haven't, you don't have it set up on your, through your text yet.
Oh, sorry, Anthony. I meant if there are 41, 42, 43, 44. If it goes
Oh,
beyond
yes, right. Yeah. Once you get, if you're 41 and over, then yes, it will give you, it will basically not allow you to submit an answer. Monica, the link is not case sensitive. Pollev, make sure you're going to pollev.com. So polleverywhere.com is what you're going to use as the teacher to set up your account and create your polls. But you need to go to pollev.com, and that's actually the student side or the user side, participant side. Yeah, and if you've actually done it, then it says response recorded. Yeah, so it looks like some folks, yeah, we're getting a few more folks here. Okay, so I'd also, as it comes in, you know, I want us to think about this as a teacher for a second, right? So, okay, so we know what the correct answer is, or most of us know what the correct answer is, right? And actually, as the instructor, we could show the correct answer. That's one of the options that we have. A little check mark appears, and then the other answers are grayed out. But, you know, when we're asking these kinds of questions in the class, and we're thinking, oh, well, okay, so 11 people got it right. What about the 7 or 8 who didn't get it right? right? So should I do something, should I take a moment to step back from what we're doing right now and, kind of reteach, or, make sure that those students, get another opportunity to find out what the correct answer is? Or do I just kind of plow through my lesson and maybe come back to it at a later point, right? So the beauty of this kind of activity is that it does give you the opportunity to maybe take a pause and then, see if you need to do some reteaching, okay? Okay, I'm gonna try another question. Name one word to describe your feeling right now, okay? And you should, on your device, it should have forwarded now to the next question. Susan asks about accessible for students with visual impairment. Susan, I don't know the answer to that question. However, I will say that when you are, so you see, as a presenter, I'm scrolling over the right-hand side of things, and there is a visual settings button here that you might be able to play around with to get some better, to kind of set up your poll to make it more visually accessible for students. So I'm sorry, I don't know enough about the particular settings of the Poll Everywhere, but you do have some options to adjust some of the visual settings of your polling. Okay, for those of you who are familiar with word clouds, this is what we're working with right now. And so answers that are repeated more than once, those answers tend to show up larger than the other answers that don't get as many mentions. So it looks like right now, more people are tired, happy, relaxed, lethargic, hungry, and we're getting fewer answers with informed, exhausted, appreciative, distracted, encouraged. Okay, and it's a word cloud, so it will adjust as more answers come in. Okay, so again, if you're thinking about, let's say you put up a question and you're getting the student responses back in, maybe some of the answers that come into the cloud or that are showing up in the cloud might provide a prompt for further discussion or conversation, or so again, depending on how you form the question for this particular activity, it might lead into an opportunity for students to work together, converse, small group discussion, something like that. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question. Okay, what is one activity you do to stay healthy? So go ahead and type in your answers there. And I'm sorry, Ajua, if that's the correct pronunciation, I don't mean to mispronounce it. Question was, can you use a word cloud with multiple choice? So actually, those are two separate types of questions. So you would either do a multiple choice. So I guess your question is, like, depending on how the answers come in, can they form a word cloud? I don't think they can. Actually, now that you asked that question, let me just. You might be able to adjust it. I don't think you can, but Adjo, take a look again when you in your account. Take a look at visual settings and kind of play around with it a little bit. You might be able to. I'm not sure if I didn't think you could, but I'm not positive about that. Okay, for this particular question, we're getting kind of a rolling view of the answers as they're coming in. So this is kind of another alternative to how you are getting back answers from your students. Okay. Fantastic. I love desserts and healthy in the same sentence. So that sounds fantastic. Okay, I'm going to move on to one more here. Now, what we've just done are polls, right? The questions have come one at a time, right? But in Poll Everywhere, you also have the option of grouping your questions together into a survey. And the nice thing about this feature is that it allows your students, each of your students, to kind of work at their own pace, right? So I put 3 different questions into the survey, and but the thing is that everybody's working at their own pace, right? So when we do the polling questions one by one, we have to move as a group, right? Kind of in lockstep. But if we create a survey instead, where we take those questions and we put them together, then we have a different option for our students. And I know sometimes folks ask the question, oh, can I integrate this into my Google Classroom or my LMS or my Moodle course or my Canvas course or what have you? So I'm going to show you how you can share this. But the thing is, if I would say that if you're interested in doing something like that, is that you create the survey with the group questions together and share that in your LMS, because what you'll be doing instead is you'd have to share the questions one by one, each with their own link in the, in your LMS, in your Google Classroom course or your Moodle course or Canvas course. So it makes a lot more sense to put them, all the questions together into a survey, and then share the one survey with the students so that they can do all the questions at the same time. Okay, so as folks are working on the survey, oops, wrong screen. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, let me think about this. Okay, and you can see what we're looking at is here, there are 3 questions in the survey. So we see that the people at the top have done all 3 questions. The people in the middle have done 2 of the 3 questions, and the people at the bottom have done 1 question. So this is kind of a visual cue to see kind of how, what's the completion of the survey, kind of the completion rate of the survey, or the way that these students are being able to get through this. So again, as the teacher, what we can do is we can show the results of the survey. I'm hoping this is correct. Okay, so this was the first question. Quick brown fox jumped over the lazy. So the correct answer is dog. And you can Google that if you've never seen it before. And we can still see, some answers are coming in as people are still working on the survey. Next question was, what is your favorite day of the week? So it looks like Friday is the most popular day. Again, this is a word cloud that we've created. Okay. And then this is a really cool kind of a question that basically it's a question that allows people to click on a map or click on a graphic. So what we're seeing here is, it looks like a lot of people like this blue color, and then a few people like the yellow color, 3 people like the kind of orangish color, only 1 person likes the red, 2 like the blue. But it's nice because when you kind of had a map or a graphic in the question, and then you had the ability to click on a portion of that you think is, that's your answer. Okay, Amy, it looks like maybe your internet might be lagging, so that's possible. If you had a bad internet connection, you might be a bit behind where we are right now. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay, so that's basically how the poll everywhere works. Just to kind of give you the experience of it. I'd like to switch back to my presentation. I know we're at 2:30. I always plan so much stuff, and I'm sorry for that. So I think what I'll do today in the interest of time is I'm going to walk you through how to create a couple of questions. And then, so maybe as your homework, I'll have you practice at home, and then maybe when we come back next week, we can try a couple of them when we start next week. Okay, so if you're logged into your, let me do this rather than telling you. I will go ahead and stop this. Okay, so, okay, if you've created a Poll Everywhere account, this is what you should be seeing when you've logged into your account, or some kind of version of this, okay? Poll Everywhere logo's up in the upper left-hand corner. You have this create button. You have some functions across the top here. And then as you start creating questions and polls, they're gonna show up in this kind of middle part of your screen right here, okay? So if you've created an account and logged into your account, what I would recommend starting with is clicking on this new group button. So basically, you want to organize your, if you're only going to ask one question, then you probably could just keep the question as one question. But if you're thinking about maybe asking 2 or 3 questions, I would create a group first. So I'm going to go ahead and create a group. And I'm going to call it webinar practice group. Okay. So here's my new group here, webinar practice group. Okay. Now, once I've created the group, what I should do is go ahead and create. Okay. So when you click on create, it's going to bring you to this screen right here. Now, you see that across the top, you have a number of different question types, right? And I think for the most part, these are the types of questions that you experienced in the survey, in the poll. Okay. And Dominica says I don't have new group. Okay. So Dominica, again, if we're logged into your account, it's not on the left-hand side. You have to look in the middle a little bit where it says new group. See if you have it there. If you don't have it there, that's okay. Just follow along with what I have. And maybe we can come back to it later. Okay. So, but you don't need to create a new group. You can just start creating questions and actually move them into a group later. That you also have that option as well. Okay. So when you create, again, these are the question types that you have across the top. So we experienced multiple choice. We did a word cloud. We had that clickable image. We had the open-ended question as well. We grouped some of our questions into a survey, okay? So you have a lot of options. When you click on more on the far right side, it also opens up a lot more options here near the bottom. I don't spend a lot of time down here. I'm usually with what's up here is pretty sufficient for me. But if you want to go ahead and spend some time like looking at these and experimenting with them, please feel free to do so, okay? So let's just start with a simple multiple choice question. Okay, so go ahead and select multiple choice. And then it tells you you're going to ask a question, let participants choose from a list of answers. Okay, so, think of a question. And of course, I can never think of a question. Oh my gosh, I'm so dry. Oh, okay. What is the largest state in the US of A? Okay, first of all, this is a terrible question, right? Because is it the largest size-wise or is it the largest population-wise, right? So already, if we're thinking about question formation, it's like, oh, well, wait, I need to ask a super clear question so that my students, there's no confusion as to what I'm asking my students, okay? So what is the largest state in terms of area in the United States? Okay, so let's think of 4 answers. Alaska, Texas. If we want to add more options, we can put them down here. California. Okay, again, we don't want to ask, or we don't want to put an answer like this, right? Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the smallest state in the union, right? So this is an implausible alternative, right? All of these answers should be plausible, right? So we want to think of what the biggest states are in the union, right? So let's put Florida, for example. I don't know how big Florida is. It's a pretty big state though, okay? So we could add more, we could add fewer. The correct answer in terms of area is Alaska. So we go ahead and mark that one. Okay. All right. And then if we're finished with this, we want to go ahead and create it. Now, again, let's look at the bottom here before we do so. If we have that group set up, go ahead and open up that drop down. We just created the webinar practice group. So if we want to make sure that this question ends up in that group, go ahead and click that group, and then you go ahead and create. Okay, and it will show up there. Now let's say, for example, I forgot. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Or I put it in the wrong group. So I'm going to put it in the wrong group and create it. Okay. Now we get kind of a view of what this question will look like. Let's go back to Poll Everywhere for a second. Okay, so I look in webinar practice group, I don't see my question. It's like, oh my gosh, where's my question? Okay, so I noticed that I put it in the wrong group. I put it in the default group. Here's my question right here. So I can move it. I have the ability to do that. Go ahead and click on the question. All of these questions to the left-hand side of the checkbox. Click check. We have some actions here. You can go ahead and open up the actions. Now, I don't see move here, but there is up near the top. I have to move my Zoom toolbar, sorry. You should also notice these 3 dots up here as well. So go ahead and open up these 3 dots. And here I have more functions. So here I have move. So go ahead and click on move. And then it disappears at the top. Okay, where do you want to move it, Anthony? So I really want to move it to this group, the webinar practice group, okay? Go ahead and click on the group, move it or apply it in this case. Do you really want to do this? Yes. Done, okay? It's thinking. Okay, now if I look at my webinar practice group, here's the question that I really want in this group, okay? So that's how you basically form a question. Now, let's click on the question that we've just created. And we can see, we go back to kind of that presentation view of the question, right? Now I want to point out what we're looking at here. This kind of set of commands that's kind of in the middle of the screen at the moment are the commands that we use to administer the poll kind of in real time, okay? So our students can't do anything with this poll until we activate the poll, okay? Until we activate this poll, nobody will be able to participate in this poll, okay? So if it's a multiple choice, eventually we could show the correct answer. Here's that visual settings button that I was talking about where we may want to adjust the look of our presentation as well. Next and previous has to do with once you have more than one question in your poll, you can navigate back and forth between the questions. So you can go to the next question, you can go to previous question by using next and previous down here, okay? I also want to point out what you were seeing on the right-hand side. You will definitely want to take a look at these options as well. So configure, for example, if you want to make sure that people can actually use the text messaging function, you want to make sure that it's turned on, for example. You may want to keep everyone completely anonymous for the poll. So right now it allows people to put in a name, but if you want to make it an anonymous poll, you can also adjust the settings here. And then you do have some options here in terms of responses. Maybe you only want people to do the poll one time. You don't want them to go back and change their answers or anything like that. So look at those settings down here. In the test feature here, the test tab, you can actually see how this is going to work on a mobile device. So you can practice here either by using a browser or using the text messaging function. So you would go ahead and put in the this OTAN trains you into this box right here and send it. And then you could practice how the text function would work here, okay? And then probably this is important for folks as well, this present, right? How do we present this poll, right? How are people gonna be able to get to the poll so that they can actually take the poll? So presenting from the web, the most important thing here is to be able to open up the full screen. So if you're in a Zoom room, for example, when you click on full screen like this, you'll get that kind of full screen version, which will show up much better for people as they're taking the poll. As the presenter, when you scroll over on the right-hand side, those commands will pop up for you. They won't pop up for the students, they'll pop up for you, okay? So let's go back to, let's exit full screen, go back to our commands here, and we're still on present. When you open up the share, okay, so these are the different ways that we can share our poll. So, oh, and people are taking the poll because they've activated it. Okay, so, which is fine. So again, when I mentioned, you know, let's say for example, well, I really want to, I want to put a link to this in my Google Classroom, my Canvas class, my Moodle class, whatever. All you need to do is copy the link to this poll, paste it over in your Google Classroom, and then people will be able to access your poll. And then the nice thing here is that people can respond without the poll being active. So people actually back in the LMS or the Canvas or Google Classroom or whatever will be able to take the poll, okay? Here's this poll ev. So like if I'm opening up a browser, like what some of you have done, then this is the way that we could actually, what we could do is we could also paste this, we could either paste this link or paste this into the Zoom chat, and then people would be able to get to it that way as well, okay? If you know anything about embedding it, you can also embed the poll like in a Google site or on a web page, maybe a Canvas page or your LMS page. So you have some different options in terms of sharing it, okay? Let me stop here. And if you have questions in the chat, go ahead and put them in the chat. Actually, I'm gonna stop this poll. Thank you for those of you who responded. Let me switch back to my slides. So I'm in the wrong browser. Okay, and back in the slides, I've actually kind of gone, the steps that we've just gone over, I put them into the series of slides here. So again, you wanna create a new group and then go ahead and create. Here are your different question type options. And then as the presenter, these are the different commands that you wanna pay attention to. These are the commands we use as we're administering the poll in real time. These are the commands on the right-hand side that we use for setting up access to our poll and any kind of restrictions that we want to put on the poll as well. And then again, with the focus on, you know, presenting, how do we actually get this to the students so they're able to take the poll? Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to the Zoom room. So what I would like to encourage you to do is, you know, over the next week is, you know, go ahead and set up your Poll Everywhere account and create a couple of polls. And then when we come back next week, let's start with some of you, you know, sharing your polls with us. And then we can do that as kind of an icebreaker for next week, okay? But if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I'm going to switch very quickly to exit ticket. It looks like Heidi has posted a couple of links to her poll. So if people want to click on that link, it should open up in another browser. And then you can go ahead, maybe when we're done in a few minutes, to go ahead and click on the poll, or, you know, take Heidi's poll and see how it's working. Okay. So I want to finish up with exit tickets in the last 10 minutes here. So an exit ticket is another kind of a questionnaire that we can set up for our students. We use it at the end of the class to see, as kind of a check for us, to see what it is that the students have learned and not learned, right? Where are the gaps in the things that they've learned today in the class, okay? And at this one, in this one particular article I read, I like this kind of mnemonic reminder about exit tickets: create, collect, and clarify. So again, the create is, we create the exit ticket, but we have to be very strategic in how we create this, right? This is an assessment that we're giving the students as they're walking out the door, right? It can't be this long questionnaire. It's maybe one question, okay, on the student's way out the door. We collect the information, okay, and then the data that comes back to us, we use this data as the instructor to clarify what it is that the students have learned and what the students might need a refresher on maybe when we come back to the next class, okay? So here's some possibilities with exit tickets. One of the questions could focus on we're checking for student understanding, or maybe we emphasize the essential question or topic or grammar point or whatever that we taught today. So just think about, you know, for today, what would be a good question to ask in the exit ticket from today's webinar that would check your understanding of what it was I was trying to teach you today, okay? Another possibility is maybe ask the students to, you know, what questions they still have about what it is we covered today, right? What are the questions you still have? What are the things that you're still not clear about from what we learned about today, okay? An exit ticket could also give students the chance to apply the content in a new way, or maybe students solve a problem that had to do with what it is they covered in today's class, okay? So again, what would be a good question to ask in this regard? So if you can switch over to the Google site for a second, again, bit.ly/tech-tools-assess. So the far right item that I've included is an example of an exit ticket. And I'm gonna open that up so we can take a look at this. So this is an example of an exit ticket that I've created. Now my exit ticket for our example here has 3 questions, but again, with an exit ticket, you want to probably only ask one question, okay? So again, you have to think very carefully about what's the question that you're gonna ask students on their way out the door. That's gonna give you some good information about what just happened in the last hour or two that you can then take and reflect on, you know, as a part of your kind of follow up to your lesson, you know, how you process how the lesson went for you. And then take that information and then maybe take those results and churn them into your planning for tomorrow's lesson or the next day's lesson, okay? So here are some example questions that I've posed for you. So maybe today a good clarifying question might be, what is the difference between a poll and a survey? Okay, so that way I would know, okay, maybe, you know, as the instructor, okay, people have a really good understanding of what a poll is and what a survey is, okay? Another possible question is question 2. What questions do you still have about questionnaires we studied today? Okay, so maybe there are some things that people still are not clear about, and they can pose those as questions to you for you to see, like, okay, here's the things that people still are having trouble with, or what they're struggling with today, okay? Another possible question is number 3, how will you use polls or surveys with your students? So for me, this is a way to see if and how you will apply the knowledge that you learned today in your practice, okay? Can you even use polls and surveys, you know, after today's session? And if you can, how much you use them, okay? If you want to go ahead and fill those out, let me just see, maybe some of you, the more ambitious of you, might have already filled it out. So let me go back and just see if anybody actually has filled it out. And oh my God, we have 1 response. Yay, thank you. Thank you, you are number 1. Okay, so as the teacher, again, this is the teacher view. We're looking at a Google form here, right? So again, this is the information that I'm gonna collect, and then this information is gonna clarify for me how I'm going to set up my lesson for tomorrow, for the next lesson, right? It looks like people, you know, if I had more responses, it looks like people still don't understand the difference between a poll and a survey, right? That was like a key element of today's class, right? So I definitely, as the teacher, want to go back and set up some kind of an icebreaker, for example, where we could practice polls and surveys and make sure that people get another look at or another view of what's a poll, what's a survey, what's the difference between the two, when might I use a poll, when might I use a survey, so on and so on, okay? Again, if you go back to the, people are having a little trouble finding it, if you go back to my Google site, bit.ly/tech-tools-assess. If you're on a mobile device or a different, if you're not on a computer, you may need to scroll down or mouse down or something. You might have a different view than what, you might have everything in a column view instead. But if you're on a computer or laptop, I have slides, I have my notes, and then I have the exit ticket. So go ahead and open the exit ticket. It's on my Google site. And Ajwa asked, is this an example of an embedded poll? Actually, Ajwa, so the way that I've set it up is I have the Google form in my drive, my Google Drive. So here's the original Google form, example of an exit ticket. And then what I did was back in my Google site, let me open that for a second. So again, this is the teacher view of what we're looking at here. So in my Google site, if it decides to open, okay. So let me do this. Let me go add another layout here. So on my site, I click on the plus to add an item, and then all I did was from my drive, and then I go back into that assessment folder. And then here is there's a quick Google form lesson. Here's that Google form that I created, example of an exit ticket. I click on it, and then if I insert it, now I've added it to my Google site, okay? But you can also grab an embed code for the form, and then you can embed that somewhere else. Like if you wanna go embed it over in your Canvas class or your Google Classroom or your Moodle class, or if you have your own Google site or website, you could grab that embed code and then embed it over there, okay? So you have a lot of options. I don't even know where I am at the moment. Let me go back to the responses. Where am I? Oh, here we are. Okay, so again, just to say, you know, this is really valuable information for you as the teacher to get some feedback from your students on how the lesson went that day. Take that information and then be very thoughtful about and intentional in what your lesson planning is going to be for tomorrow or the next class or whatever. Okay? Okay, thanks folks. Have a great Wednesday, rest of your Wednesday. See you next week.